discussion is former Member of Parliament, Dr. Frank Anthony. Welcome, Doc.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Um, Frank, I'm happy to have you here, especially because you were there in the Ashman's building after the elections when the tabulation began.
Right.
Mr. Mingo was following the law at that time and calling from the numbers from the statements of poll. And everything was going smoothly. I think we got to about 400 boxes, and everything was going fine, no major discrepancies. And then suddenly that process stopped, a spreadsheet was introduced, and well, there were a lot of things that went on after that. Give us your take on those events that took place.
Well, first of all, four of us were accredited or should have been accredited by GCOM because we subsequently learned that none of us now are accredited. The PPP wrote to GCOM 7 days before the elections to state who would be its counting agent and who would be the assistant counting agent. So Mr. Charles Ramson was our counting agent. Myself, Neil Kumar, and Dharam Kumar Siraj were the assistant counting agents. So we were there in our rights as the PPP counting agent to witness the tallying or the tabulation of the results on the East Coast, Georgetown, and East Bank. The first day, as you said, went perfectly all right because Mr. Mingo was using the statements of poll that GCOM has in their possession, and we were using ours. So when they did that, what we found that there was very little, if any, discrepancies. On the second day, that first day process was suspended around 9 o'clock, and then we were told to come back on the second day.
Right. But before you go on, sorry,
Yeah.
that process was the process that was being used in the other 9 regions.
Exactly.
Right. And we had no issues.
And there was
Neither party had
no
any
issue
issues.
in any of the regions.
Right.
Right? They all went through successful counts, and the results were properly declared at those regional office. So we were asked to come back on the following day, and we got back there on the following day.
Sure.
And as you would recall, there was several delays.
Yes.
We
I
got
witnessed
there,
myself.
we got there at 9, and then we were told that the process would start about 10 or 11. We waited. At 11 o'clock, there was another delay until 1 o'clock.
Right.
And then sometime in between, maybe 11 and 1, we were told that the returning officer, Mr. Mingo, was not feeling well.
Right.
Somebody volunteered my service that I should go and check him out. But Mr. Lowenfield said that they have it under control.
Right.
And therefore, they called the hospital, I think, and he was subsequently taken to the hospital. And apparently it wasn't anything serious because he was subsequently discharged. So while he went out with the ambulance, he came back before 3 o'clock, and he came back walking. So either the doctors at GPHC did a miraculous job, or maybe nothing serious was wrong with him. So he came back, and eventually we had the restart of this process. But it didn't get very far because when it restarted, instead of GCOM using the statements of poll, what GCOM started using was a spreadsheet that we didn't know where they got that spreadsheet from.
Right.
And the team that was there representing the PPP Civic noticed something very bizarre. They did 23 statements of poll, and in 19 of them, almost all the results for the APNU went up either by 100 or maybe 120, 150. It varied. But the only party whose numbers were going up was APNU. And we draw this to the attention of the clerk who was reading these things out. And we said to her that these numbers are wrong. It was not matching with our statements of poll. And it was not only the PPP statements of poll, it was not matching with all the other parties that were there. The APNU people who were there kept silent. They were very quiet, and they were saying, no, 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 let's go on, let's go on. They wanted the process to be rushed through. But after going through 19 of them, with only APNU votes being increased.
And
then
PPP's votes being decreased.
And PPP own being decreased. But what you also notice is that apart from that change that they made with the APNU vote, they were also changing the total.
Right.
To accommodate the amounts that they changed this thing by. And so we objected. Eventually, we got them to stop the process. And after some prolonged delay, we got Mr. Lowenfield, who is the chief elections officer, to come into the room. And we had a discussion with him, pointing out to him that the process that was used the day before with SOPs, we need to go back to that process. And he promised us faithfully that he's going to use that process. In fact, there are a number of videos circulating.
Correct.
Where he actually said that we are going to use the SOPs.
And Frank, we even had to make our case to have Lowenfield go back to using the statements of poll. We read the law to him. Anil was there, and then had to present to him and make a case to why he should have the statements of poll when it's clearly in the law.
It's clearly there, and plus the observers who were there, many of them were saying, the local observers, felt that this is the process, this is what you needed to do. Some of them even voiced their concerns. And the international observers, of course, they didn't say anything, but they were observing the process of what was happening. But, you know, the whole thing was really a setup. Because if you actually go with how people voted, everybody know that the PPP won the elections. We didn't win Region 4. We want to make that very clear.
Yes.
But the amount of votes that APNU got in Region 4 was not enough to, you know, squash the amount of votes that we got in the other 9 regions. Right, because we had a lead of 52,000 with the other 9 regions, and they were not able to make that amount in Region 4. So when you combine the two things, the PPP would have won the elections. And that is why, while GCOM, we are waiting GCOM to put out the real results, the PPP went and put out its results for Region 4, so that anybody who want to see what those SOPs numbers are, they can go online and check it. And so we did that, and I think a lot of rational Guyanese was able to go there, check it. In fact, I understand the first night when we put it out, we had more than 100,000 visitors to the site. And so people were going there and checking. And I think this whole country by now would have known what those SOPs are saying. And what is now being presented by GCOM is obviously at variance with what the real numbers are.
Right. And we know that Mingo made a declaration without going through the process.
And that's another thing, because the process requires that you go through this whole tabulation verification exercise so that every polling station, you can account for it. And when you finish that, and everybody kind of agree with that, then the RO would now go and declare those results. What we found is that having attempted to use the spreadsheet and he was stopped, early in the morning, that's like 2 in the morning, they found another DRO who came in, did 3 SOPs, and then stopped and said he was tired. And this is after Mr. Lowenfield would have told us that once we restart the process, we are going to the end using SOPs.
Right.
They did 3, they stopped, and then the whole process was suspended almost till the next morning. Well, it never really got restarted.
Right.
We then had to go to the courts. The Chief Justice heard the case, and having listened to what we were presenting, she herself said that you need to have this process done properly and using the statements of poll. In the meantime, while that case was going on in court, GCOM resumed the verification exercise, but this time they were rushing through, right? So while in the very first day we did 400, when they restarted the process, they just rushed through. And so they completed about another 400 or so. So by the time the Chief Justice on the second occasion made a very explicit ruling, there were only 89 statements of poll that was there to be verified. They didn't want to go back and restart the process. And with those 89, it's interesting because the Chief Justice said, you must show the people the SOPs so that they can compare it. And she said it should be at least projected on the wall so everybody in the room can see it. When they restarted the process, they shifted the venue. They went from Ashman's building to High Street, and they put them under a tent. And then they had a projector there. They were not saying whether it's the SOP. They had a piece of paper that they were using and then projecting this on the wall. And of course, they didn't allow anybody to verify that this was the actual SOP. And the numbers that were being projected on the wall, we don't know where they got those numbers from. And again, it shows that they were inaccurate numbers.
And they were not entertaining objections.
And they were not entertaining objections. So the whole process, and with the officers who were in charge and who were managing this process on behalf of GCOM, they were very complicit. So I hope that when this process is completed and we have the right results, that there would be a serious investigation into the actions of these officers of GCOM who tried to thwart this democratic process. And I really hope that this would be taken seriously and that people would be charged for not doing their duties, because this is an important thing. We cannot have an institution like the Guyana Elections Commission that people would want to have confidence in, that they would do the right thing. And here you have a set of rogue officers, if you like, who for whatever reason are ignoring how people voted and then making up their own numbers and calling them out as if that is the official vote. And that cannot be tolerated. That's fraud. And almost all the observers, both local, international, have come out clearly and condemned this process. We even had the Secretary of State for the U.S., Mike Pompeo, saying that unless this thing is properly tabulated for Region 4, that there would be serious sanctions coming Guyana's way. So this is a very serious thing, and people are taking it very seriously.
And the joint statement from Canada, EU, US, they spoke about isolation.
Yeah.
And we know that they're referring to sanctions. And I think a lot of Guyanese want to know, because this is so uncharted for us, this territory is so uncharted for us, they want to know what those sanctions will look like. What does that really mean for Guyanese? Because sanctions, let's face it, even though it may be targeted in the beginning, it will eventually affect all Guyanese if this administration, if the APNU AFC continue to be stubborn.
Yeah, and I think so, but I don't know what those sanctions might look like, but judging from what they have done in other countries, you would notice that they first start very precisely with the key players. So in this instance, you might have some of the key players in GCOM, some of the key players in the government. So they'll probably start with them. And when they start with them, what we have noticed happen in other countries, they would take away their U.S. visa, which means that they are prevented from going to the United States. If these persons have assets, some of them might have bank accounts. Those can be frozen. If they have a home and things like that abroad, these assets would be frozen, so they can't use them. And there are a number of other measures. So I think, judging from what has happened in other countries, the immediate steps would be revocation of their visas and then freezing of assets and things like that. And later on, that can spread not just to these individuals, but to their family members and broader family circle, and also other political actors who would have aided and abetted this process. So that can get very wide, because I'm sure there are lots of people who have been involved or who have been complicit in making somebody's decision and causing maybe some of the officers who feel that they can get away with this behavior, maybe causing them to behave that way. But we are in a very serious situation here, and when Western governments would threaten sanctions or isolation, that has to be taken seriously. As you know, most Guyanese families, we have some relative or someone who is living in the US or Canada or in the UK, and if you can't go and see your brother, mother, father, whoever, you know, that's something.
And many ordinary Guyanese depend on remittances
Right.
as well from the United States and Canada and so on.
And that's another big way, because if they're preventing remittances to come to the country, that's going to be another big way
Definitely.
that it's going to affect Guyanese. So what is being said right now should not be taken lightly. I hope that the reasonable people who are in the APNU and AFC, that they're listening. Because if you take this country down this road, it's going to be a very sad day for this country. They might have their own personal ambition and all of that, that they, want to turn ministers and whatever position they want to get in the government. But they need to start thinking now that if you really love this country, you have to adhere to the democratic practices that the world would want to see. And these Western countries are not joking,
Right.
because they saw that we did not have a free and transparent process, and that what took place in that Region 4 office is not the right one. It was fraudulent, and they would like that fixed. They want that to be recounted.
Now, on the last occasion when we went to court, the chairman of the Guyana Elections Commission, Claudette Singh herself,
Right.
gave the Chief Justice an undertaking. Later that evening, that undertaking, that oral undertaking, was followed up by a statement, a
Right.
written statement by Claudette Singh acknowledging that she had given the court an undertaking that she would facilitate a recount. Subsequent to that, we know that it has been reported that it was Mr. Granger himself who contacted Prime Minister
Prime
of
Minister
Barbados,
Motley,
Mia
yeah.
Motley, and asked her to put together a team to come down here to do a recount. He wanted a transparent process, and he wanted credible results declared. That ended up into a separate fiasco, a fiasco of its own. And we know that that team has now departed.
Well, I mean, we are happy to have the recount, because we knew that the process that GCOM engaged in through the RO Mingo, that was really a fraudulent process. So the actual numbers of vote that the PPP got was not counted. In fact, they took away votes from us. And by some magic, they were giving APNU and AFC additional votes. So that process was fraudulent, and it happened before the eyes of international, local, and the political parties that were present in the room. So we cannot accept that process. Yet this man, because he has powers under the Representation of the People's Act, he went along and declared the results. And even with that, everybody said, no, it's wrong. And so I think the government was offered a way out. They got some nice terms they use, like a face-saving measure, right? So the government was offered this, and we were all happy when the president called Prime Minister Mia Motley and said, can you send that CARICOM
Right.
team in, right? If we had that recount, by now, all of us would have known the results.
Definitely.
And, the winner of the elections would have been declared. But strangely, if APNU is so confident that they've won the elections, why is it that they're preventing a recount in Region 4? Because what is a recount? A recount is going to the ballot box, opening them up, and in the presence of everybody, count back all the ballots that are there.
Right.
And so you would know how much APNU got, how much PPP got, how much the other parties got, and so with that you would get the result for each box. What is so wrong with that? If you're so confident that you have won the elections, let's do it, right? And so we can determine who is the winner once and for all.
Right.
But no. On one hand, we heard the president wanted this. The president and the leader of the opposition, Mr. Jagbeo, signed that agreement. And yet, we were on standby to go in and start the recount. We're still waiting because by some magic, imagine this, the president, who I would assume is heading his political party, APNU and AFC. So he is saying one thing. He is saying, I want a recount. Call the chairman of CARICOM and said, please send a team to do this recount. When the people come in to do the recount, a member of his party, a candidate who was on the APNU list, decided with some lawyers that they don't want the recount, that they should stop this recount. And so they went to court, and that's the case that we'll be hearing about tomorrow. And basically, that process, they're seeking to block the recount, not have no recount, which the president has agreed to, right? So they don't want this recount. And what they want now is to take Mingo's fraudulent results and declare that, and then let GCOM use that and declare the overall winner of the elections. When everybody know that what Mingo declared is fraudulent. So how are we going to advance the process like this? It can't work. And this is being done in the full glare of the international community. So I think if whoever is pushing this line and trying to become stubborn and adopting such a hardline posture, that if they press ahead and they force GCOM to go down that route and declare this fraudulent result, then the only alternative that you're leaving to the Western governments is to impose sanctions on Guyana.
Yes. Now, Frank, I think that's the most mind-boggling thing about all of this, is that if we want transparent results, we want credible results, even those who are supporters of APNU AFC and who believe, if they believe strongly that their party has won, they too should be calling for a recount, because it's not about who won the elections. We haven't gotten to that part yet. It's about this process, and everybody is entitled to have their votes counted. I voted in Region 4.
Yeah.
I would like my vote to be counted, as is many other persons whose votes are contained in those boxes with statements of poll that have never seen the light of day. And we can't go back to the statements of poll process because those statements have been compromised. We were put out of the office. So the only thing is to go to the boxes, which would expose the will of the people. Yeah. And, Mia Motley, apart from the politicians and the APNU AFC, GCOM itself, Mia Motley said, it is clear, this is after the team departed, it is clear that there are forces that do not want to see the votes recounted for whatever reason. Any government which is sworn in without credible and fully transparent vote count process would lack legitimacy. All Guyanese should want to ensure that they have a legitimate government in place.
Exactly, and that's a very powerful statement, because what the chairman of CARICOM is saying to us is that you got maybe a group of people there in the APNU and AFC that is trying to prevent this recount from happening, right? And we saw that by their actions of going to court, taking a court case, and trying to block the recount. Now, something is very bizarre about this, because here it is. I would assume that the presidential candidate for APNU and AFC is the leader of that party, right? They would listen to him. Why would some section in the party, I would want to call them maybe a rogue section of the party, disagree, disobey with the president, and then try to go do this? Something is not right. Something is not, gelling in the APNU and AFC. Right. And that is a point, we have to consider. But whatever it is, I don't think that grouping, that force, is such a strong one. What we need is the reasonable-minded APNU AFC people to say, no, you cannot do that. You cannot go against the president. You cannot, look, you're making us look bad. You're disgracing us. This perhaps is not what our party stand for. Where are those voices? We need to hear more from people. In the APNU AFC, I was very happy I saw a statement from one of the parties who is in that coalition with the APNU, and that is the Justice for All party, coming out and making a statement to say that they're in disagreement with what is going on. And that's good. We should hear a statement from the WPA. We should hear statements from the other members of that coalition. Why are they silent? Because if we really want democracy in this country, if we want free and fair elections in this country, if these are the cardinal principles for which we stand, now is the time to speak up. We cannot allow a couple of people to hijack this process and taint our whole country. We can't allow that. And I think, we really have to appeal, because I still believe there are people in the APNU, there are people in the AFC who know that what is happening is wrong. You know what's interesting? The APNU and AFC would have gotten the statements of poll too. So they know the results, right? GCOM has declared the other 9 regions. So nobody has any fault with those results. They have accepted them. Region 4, APNU got the results. They got the same statements of poll that we got. So they know how much votes they got. So why is it, having the numbers, that they're still trying to play this game? Right?
Because I think another reason for that is that many Guyanese are still seeing this as a political issue. This has moved beyond that. This is now a national issue. This is an issue that concerns democracy, and if we want to live in a democratic state, we have to adhere and abide by democratic principles and values, and that may result in you having a government that you may not have supported, but if you want to live in a free and democratic society, that's how democracy works.
You got to respect the rules.
And the will of the people must be reflected in the results. You cannot hijack the process or bend the rules when it doesn't suit you, and then want to go on and live in a free and fair society. We have children. We have our future to look forward to. Guyana's future is bright. One of the senators, I believe, said so. He said Guyana's future is bright, but only if democracy prevails.
Exactly.
So that's the problem. It's not a political one. It's more of a national issue.
Well, sometimes people try to narrow it down. Oh, that's a PPP, APNU kind of thing. It's not that. As you're rightly pointing out, it's a broader issue. It's the principles on which our society would be governed. It's the values of our society. And we have always said, and we have prided ourselves that we are a democratic country. One of the hallmarks of a democracy is that you must have free, fair, and transparent elections. And that's one of the arguments that we're putting up now. Why is it that an institution such as GCOM is trying to create this process that is so fraudulent? Why is it that they don't want to be scrutinized using statements of poll? Why is it that they are also becoming I would say, complicit in not wanting to have the recount. These are things as an institution that you will want to have go out there so that people can say you're a credible institution. But we have seen the behavior of some of the key players, and it leaves a lot to be desired because they don't seem to be working in GCOM's interests. They don't seem to be working in the interests of the Guyanese people. They seem more to be working in their personal interests and, of course, in the interests of the APNU and AFC. That's what it seemed to me because I've been there, for quite a long time, looking at all these things, trying to get the results tabulated in Region 4. I mean, it's atrocious. The behavior is atrocious. The last one, I couldn't believe this. We were there about 2 days ago at the convention center. And we were told to go there for 4 o'clock because they're supposedly going to start the recount.
Right.
And when we got there, after waiting around for a while, we saw the team from the Vector Control Unit of the Ministry of Public Health came in. And so I spoke with the guys and I was saying to them, what are you guys doing here? They said we were instructed to come here to fumigate the place. Yeah. I said, what are you fumigating about? They can't answer. I said, the biggest threat we got now is coronavirus, but fumigation wouldn't kill the virus. So what are you doing here? And they technically, they knew the technical things that this is just a ploy, but they said to me they are following instructions. Whose instructions?
No,
all they were
I
trying
think
to
it's certainly gotten ridiculous.
Right.
Yeah.
All they were trying to do was prevent us from using the building so that they can further delay the process so that that CARICOM team would have been frustrated and left the next day, So all these ploys, I don't think people are believing the lies that they're being told now. And the DPI and all the channels that the government got spinning, I don't think people are believing them anymore. They've gone beyond the ridiculous now.
And I think the longer that they stay in there and the more attempts to delay the process is further exposing the sinister intention. And I don't think David Granger himself can escape that now. Because even if you were going to give him a pass, when he invited the CARICOM high-level team here, and then we didn't hear anything from him for the 3 days or so that they were here, and then his own members from within his own party ran to the courts to block the recount. I don't think he can escape now liability for that or claim that he's not
the
a part
bottom
of that.
line is that leadership is about making some hard decisions, sometimes uncomfortable decisions, but they have to be made. And what we are not seeing from Granger is taking control and making those decisions. He always seems to be hiding behind somebody, right? Or some institution or something of the sort. You got to make those decisions as a leader. And if you really love this country, then we must see that love. And sometimes you got to make the sacrifice to ensure that this country go forward. That the processes that we are struggling to build, that we protect those processes. That the democracy that we want to nurture and grow in this country, this is the way you grow it. You have to come down on the side of democracy. You have to come down on the side of free and fair elections. Not go and hide behind something and nobody can see you.
Now, I want to bring to the public's attention a statement from the Commonwealth Observer Group to Guyana. They, only yesterday, put out a detailed statement, point by point, about the events that took place. And I think it's very important that the public is aware of some of these matters because there is the propaganda machine is going on the other side, APNU, AFC, and there's a lot of misinformation about PPP interrupting the process and all of these things. And the statement from the Commonwealth Observer Group effectively debunked all of those things. So if we could just take a more in-depth look at it. So it says here, it is the clear and considered view of the group that the tabulation process conducted by the returning officer for Region 4, Mr. Claremont Mingo, were not credible, transparent, and inclusive. The series of events that the group observed in the tabulation of Region 4 results between the 3rd to the 14th of March are of grave concern. And then they went on to list specific issues. So they mentioned the repeated cessation of the tabulation process for a variety of irregular reasons.
Right.
That is like the sickness and the tiredness and all of that. The second point they made was that the group did not observe any material or substantive impediments inside the tabulation room which might have prevented the resumption of the tabulation process. Now, they have said repeatedly that PPP barged into the place, stormed the place, interrupted the process. The group has debunked that.
But
They were there.
Yeah, and you remember how we had to plea with them.
Yes.
Please restart the process. When are you going to restart the process? For hours we were doing that,
Yes.
right?
And,
Because when they
hours
stopped,
turned into days.
yeah, and we keep begging them, when are you restarting? When are you restarting? So whoever is peddling that obviously weren't there, and they don't know what happened.
Well, they're willfully peddling misinformation. Another point was the unlawful March 5th declaration of Mr. Mingo was undertaken under heavy police guard, and his departure from the tabulation center was guided and guarded by 6 police officers. We witnessed that. I have that on tape.
Yes, yes.
His departure. Now, anybody who has done something good or right or transparent wouldn't have to leave under heavy security guard.
But you remember he first came into the room to say that he's making the declaration, and people said, no, you can't do that because you haven't completed the process. Then he immediately left the room, went upstairs, and after a little while, he came out on the balcony. You remember that? And the balcony was all surrounded by police and everything. To even get, close to Mr. Mingo would have been, I don't know, you had to
He
go
was
through
on the
quite a lot of police
second
to
floor or
get
the
there.
3rd floor, and
Yeah.
we were at the bottom. So another point was on resuming the tabulation after leaving the court on the 13th of March, which was, now they've got fast forward
right.
after we went to court and we went back. Mr. Mingo refused all requests from those entitled to be present to view the actual statements of poll,
Exactly.
and did not display the spreadsheet being populated.
Right.
This compromised the process of ascertaining the credibility of the statements of poll relied on by Mr. Mingo to tabulate the results. And it was impossible for party agents and those entitled to be present to observe that the numbers being called out were being accurately entered on the spreadsheet.
Yeah. So that's another issue, because
Right.
remember when they call out whatever numbers, and the process really is you verify SOP to SOP. That didn't happen. They were verifying SOP to their spreadsheet. Then those numbers, when it's called and people agree, it's supposed to go to another desk, and the exact numbers that were agreed upon was supposed to be entered now into a new spreadsheet, and that was supposed to be projected up on the wall, so that everybody can see, well, what was just called is
It's
the
being-
actual numbers that are up there. That didn't happen, because when this first process was completed, the second process was in some corner, and nobody was able to verify what really they were inputting, right? So they could have called, I don't know, 100 votes for PPP and 50 for APNU. And then when it got to the corner, it became the other way around,
Right.
right? So that's a very valid point, because that really happened. And we protested it, and they still did not want to rectify it.
And this was in spite of the Chief Justice's decision.
Exactly.
So, and one of the last point they made is this: at no point did the leadership of the Guyana Elections Commission halt or rectify these blatant instances of disregard for the rule of law and electoral ethics, despite its vested authority to independently ensure credible elections. This hits at the heart of
Yeah.
the Guyana Elections Commission and the chairman.
Yeah. Well, there you go. This is just one observer group, and I'm sure many of the others have similar sentiments.
So those who are still saying that GCOM has to conduct this process, and if you want a recount, it has to be the same persons who should be involved in this process, because GCOM is the only body that can declare results and an independent body.
Well,
You've just had an indictment.
Yeah.
But
the thing is,
GCOM.
let's take Region 4. This RO was taken to the court for contempt of court, for not fulfilling his duties. I cannot see how this same RO would be the one, when this process restart, to be the one going about like if nothing has happened.
All right.
One of the things I think that the commission really need to do is to remove Mr. Mingo from there and have someone else appointed, so that, you know, we can have this process being completed under somebody who is not trying to rig the elections. I think that's going to be very important. But again, we have a court case. Let's see what, not we have it, the APNU people took this thing to court, that they want to stop the recount that President Grange has asked for. I mean, you know.
There are some troubling things going on in our society, and we had one such thing take place today. So police officers went to the Giffland Mall and
Right.
said that the cameras that are facing the convention center are illegal.
Oh, really?
This is the type of society that we are now living in, and that it can only get progressively worse. People should be worried about where we're headed as a country, when you can have police officers come into your business and tell you where you and how you should angle your cameras, and when in fact we should all be concerned about the safety of these containers, and those cameras provide such safety and security,
So
and
the-
we're saying it's illegal.
So the police are now concerned that people would have footage if the containers are being interfered with? I mean, they should be happy that the more cameras you got on the container, it would mean that their jobs would not be so complicated.
Precisely.
Because I understand they are part of the security detail at the convention center. So they should be happy. If you're not doing anything wrong, why you want to prevent cameras? Right? Everybody would see what's going on. So really, that's an alarming development, because maybe if you got cameras now and they're planning to do something, then that's the only reason we can surmise that you don't want those cameras there. So, you know, but I think what maybe the APNU and AFC did not expect is that so many people would actually stand up for democracy. I have been out there some afternoons,
Yes.
and people from all walks of life are coming forward and saying, no, we want to make sure that the containers are properly secure, because we don't want anybody interfere with these things. You know, ordinary people, because they have an interest, right? Political parties are there, but it's the response of ordinary people that is so good, because people have that interest. They want their vote to be counted. And as a society, we should be pleased about that. I don't understand why the police would want now to try to deter people from exercising this right of protecting the democracy or protecting these containers that we have. You know, that's something that really puzzles me. But I'm again, I want to be optimistic, and I think that whatever sinister plot people have hatched over these last 17 days or so, and maybe even before that, it has been exposed. The whole world has seen it. And right now, the safest thing for those persons to do is not to continue down that road. Because continuing down that road would lead to disaster for themselves, and also take this country down a disastrous path. I don't think they're that crazy. And they have an option right now to step back And that's what we should encourage them to do. So whoever knows these people, these forces that was mentioned by the chairman of CARICOM, whoever know them, they should start talking to them if they haven't already done so. Because this here is going to have serious repercussion on all of us. And they should start thinking about those repercussions. So I'm appealing to whoever these people are. I don't know them. But whoever they are, let them think seriously where they're taking this country. And I'm sure if some good sense can prevail, that they can help to untangle us from this situation. They can help us to go back on that path where we can have at least that recount done and the results properly declared so that the winner of the elections can be known.
You know, you spoke just now about the ordinary people who have been turning out, ordinary Guyanese citizens who leave their homes at night, and I've been out there several nights, and it's really a beautiful thing to witness.
Yes.
Guyanese coming out on their own, and it seems to be growing every night.
Yeah.
It's growing every night. Guyanese are just coming out and they're bonding together, and they know the importance.
Exactly.
They know that the answer lies in those containers.
Yeah.
And that it must not be tampered with. The integrity of our ballots must be protected. And they come out in the evenings and they stay for hours and you know it's and support us, and it's truly inspiring.
Yeah.
As a Guyanese, as a young person, I'm inspired to see our people take this initiative. And I think the members on the other side, in the APNU AFC, are constantly underestimating Guyanese.
Yeah.
They're constantly underestimating how important these elections are to Guyanese and how Guyanese value and regard their vote.
Yeah.
And so with every step or misstep that they make, it's
People
further
are,
exposing the agenda.
Yeah. And you know what's interesting? I've seen people, they will just come up and they'll bring some coffee and bring some snacks to the people who are there. I mean, it's really, you know, a good sense of solidarity and that kind of thing. And maybe it's also helping to renew this sense that our politics can be different. Right? Because when you're out there, you see people from not only all walks of life, all races as well. And I think that's a positive thing where people can come together. They're sharing this experience of trying to defend democracy here. And out of this process, I think, is going to be forged a new type of movement in our country, a movement that would not tolerate people who are trying to steal elections and trying to become dictators and all that. So it's creating that momentum. And I think that's a great thing to have in our country.
Yes. And you know, some of the footage that has been exposed, several of the recordings that we had in GCOM when persons were calling those figures and they were not matching the statements of poll. Several of those came to me from independent sources.
Exactly, because the people were appalled.
Yes, and including APNU supporters.
Yeah.
One guy forwarded stuff to me, the statement of poll that he took a photograph of.
Right.
And then when his friend who was inside GCOM as a party agent sent him the recording, it did not match. Yeah. And, you know, the young man said, I was in tears when I saw this because I voted for APNU.
You know, I think one of the things that they're also miscalculating is that the elections is about bread and butter issues, right? And a lot of people want to change APNU and AFC because things were rough under their government. They promised people all kinds of stuff, and that was not delivered. And so people wanted to get the PPP back into government. People came out in those numbers because they want PPP back in government. And they have been able now to compare APNU AFC and what PPP was doing. And when they made that comparison, they were saying, well, we want PPP back because under PPP we used to have money in our pockets. We had so much other social benefits that we were getting. And that's what people want. Right now, as this thing is being prolonged, the economy is struggling, businesses are closing, people are not coming to work. I mean, everybody right now is complaining, right? And the longer they drag this out, the worse this is going to get. And I don't know if they don't understand that, because maybe a lot of people who voted for them, they are now reconsidering because they felt, and a lot of people called me who were APNU supporters, they felt disgraced by what they're doing. People would call you and said, look, I didn't vote for this, right? This can't be how my party behaving, right? This is not what we are like. This is not our value. And I don't know if the leaders of APNU and AFC if they're not hearing that, right?
The one person on that side said, I didn't campaign for this and I didn't sign up for this.
Right. Well, we need more voices like that. And hopefully we can get those voices, because I think there are lots of people over there who disagree with this, right? And they must now be bold enough to come out and say so. Because if those voices come out, and they come out in enough numbers, we'll see a change, because people would know that this is a small cabal that is trying to hijack this process. So we need those voices. We want to encourage them. Come out, say it, talk to people, get that voice out, because all of these things can help to bring that atmosphere of change that we're looking for. And it's not too late. It's not too late.
Right. Now, I've been getting a lot of phone calls and messages from our supporters who are saying, don't give up, stay in this fight, we're with you. I do my part to reassure them. Since you're here, you do your part to reassure our supporters that we're in this for the long run.
Yeah, we are not going anywhere. We're not going anywhere. We are very confident of what is in the box. We know with the numbers that we have won the election, so we're not going anywhere. And we are not going to be bullied. We are not going to be cheated. We are here, and we are going to stand up for our rights. And we want people to do that as well. We know that people have been vigilant with us. We want that vigilance to continue. And we are encouraging all our supporters, if you know somebody who is APNU or AFC, also talk to them, explain to them what is happening. Because I think some of them are under some misapprehension that, somehow that the APNU would have won the election. Let's talk to people, let's educate them. And I'm sure with the pressure emerging from the ground that we can have this change that we're looking for. A few people at the top who believe they can hijack this process would not be able to do so if everybody else is saying differently. And as I said before, I'm optimistic that when this process is finally over, that the People's Progressive Party Civic would have prevailed in this process. But that is also because we would have had so many people supporting us, and we would have nurtured a kind of camaraderie with civil society organizations, other political parties, other civil society actors that are all coming out and adding their voice against what is happening, this undemocratic practice, this fraudulent people trying to defraud the elections and all that. So that is, it is creating a new movement, I think, in our country. But I want to urge all our supporters, don't give up hope. We are going to win this. And once the process continues, we are going to get there. So maybe it take a couple more days. Maybe it will take a week or 2 weeks. But we'll be there. And we are not frustrated. Every step, we are going to be there defending our rights. The leadership of the party has been very strong on this. And, we'll take it step by step. And we eventually believe that we would have overcome all the hurdles that they're throwing at us.
And the leader of the opposition said yesterday that, we're doing all that we can legally, and we will continue in this fight, and that there may come a time where the public may have to join in this struggle.
Yeah.
But at this point, we're asking for calm. We're asking people to remain at home and to give us a chance to work. And if that
Right.
time comes when we need the public to be involved, we will issue such guidance or such information will be shared with the public.
Yeah, struggle takes many forms.
Yes.
And we would use the appropriate form as things unfold. So we are in court, we are matching them in court, we are doing well in court. On the international scene, I think we've had a lot of support being demonstrated, and we continue to get that. You know, so there are many, many forms of struggle and combinations of these forms that we're using. And I think, you know, we'll prevail eventually. So the point is now, I am sure that the leadership of the APNU and AFC, they know the result. They know the true result. Maybe they're having difficulty breaking the news to their supporters, but they have to do that.
But, you know, Frank, that's exactly what one of the main reasons I think that they can't go back now, because the president had about 3 swearing-in ceremonies planned already that they've had to ditch.
Right.
Because I was listening to one of their live streams the other night.
Yeah.
It was Saturday night.
Right.
And the misinformation is real on in their camp. And this was Saturday, as you know, is when we had the development that Mia Motley was going to come
Right.
with her team to do a recount. And they were telling their supporters at 10 p.m. on Saturday night, after the news broke that they're
Yeah.
coming to do a recount, that all we're waiting now on is for the president to be sworn in, and he'll be sworn in tomorrow, which is Sunday. So the misguidance is a serious problem.
Well, there's where it comes back to leadership. And the key people in the APNU and AFC, they need to start lead properly and not mislead people,
Yes.
especially their supporters. And unless they do that, you know, it can create difficulties. So I only hope that for that leadership, that they have good sense prevailing.
Yes. All right, so we've come to the end of the program. Frank, it was a pleasure having
Thank
you
you.
here. And for those of you who are watching, thank you very much for tuning in, and we hope that we have brought you up to date with the situation. Beware of the fake news and the misinformation that is going on out there, and we encourage you to tune into these programs. We have several of these during the day and every day, so that we can bring you up to date with accurate and reliable information so that you can understand exactly what is happening in our country. And I urge you to take your precautions. We know that the COVID-19 virus is real, and we urge you to take your necessary precautions. Stay home if you don't absolutely have to go anywhere, and stay safe, keep your family safe, and thank you very much for joining us.
You gotta-
Like a sauna.
Yeah.
Views and opinions of TBG Channel 28. That was a paid program, and the views and opinions expressed were those of the host and other speakers and do not reflect the views and opinions of TBG Channel 28.